Okay, good evening. It is November 13th, 6:03 p.m. and officially calling this meeting to order. Welcome to the Sustainability Committee meeting. I'm your host, Johan Lopez. With us are council members Goldstein, Smith, and we have also on the call council member Shanahan. And moving on next, Katie, do we have anyone for public participation?
Don't, no, we do
Okay.
not have, no.
Great. All right. Next is approval of the minutes from October 9th. Can I have a motion? Thank you, Councilmember Goldstein. Any corrections, omissions, or deletions? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor? Okay, thank you. That passes. Okay. So next we have a presentation by Sarah Cruz on the tree master plan and some other exciting activities that we will be putting forward, hopefully, in the coming future. So, Sarah Cruz, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you guys. So is it all right if I start sharing my screen?
Sure. Yep. Go ahead.
Great. Alrighty. So thank you guys for having me on.
It's
so
really hard to hear you. I don't know
Oh,
if
yeah.
Yeah.
you're,
Yeah, Sarah, could you just a little bit more, just increase?
I don't know if it's an issue with your mic or I don't know.
All right. You know what? Give me 1 second. I'll switch to my other headphones.
No problem. No problem.
Alrighty, can you hear me any better?
Much
Oh,
better.
Gotta
perfect.
go
Okay.
old school. All right.
That's what I use. Yeah, see? Yeah.
All right, so I am Sarah Cruz. I am the arborist and horticulturist for the city of Norwalk. And I'm excited to announce that we have our draft tree master plan in hand. And so after completing the first phases of the master plan with data collection back in 2023, we now have a draft. I'm going to go over the context for why this plan is important, what went into the plan, and how it can move the city's tree programs forward in a sustainable way.
Oh, is it not?
Sorry, y'all.
There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we
There we
go.
go. Yeah.
All right, so what is a tree master plan? So this document aims to accomplish three important tasks. One is to assess the current state of our urban forests and our tree management systems. Two is to determine what can be improved within our strategies and to recommend ways to more sustainably manage our urban forest. And three is to detail and highlight the importance of our urban forest and the role that it plays in sustainability and how it benefits our community. And so, again, the purpose is kind of like a three-facet approach. So in terms of tree care, that includes everything from responding to storm damage to better caring for our newly planted trees. In terms of community health and well-being, trees provide various benefits to the community through shading and cooling our urban areas and improving air quality and public health. And then it also supports our resilience and sustainability goals. So in terms of climate resilience, we know that trees provide various environmental benefits like capturing stormwater and storing CO2. But also, what could we be doing in our tree maintenance plan to ensure that our urban forests are going to be resilient to the effects of climate change? So just quick definitions. So an urban forest is actually, it encompasses all trees and all green spaces within the city. And the tree canopy cover, which I'm going to talk about a lot in this presentation, is in a measurable way, how much area do trees take up with their leaves and their branches? So if you can just imagine the top of a tree, how much coverage is that providing? Tree canopy cover is really important in the city in terms of the sustainability. We'll get into that. And I want to emphasize that the master plan is not just a strategic plan for the city itself, but it's also an invitation to the community at large to learn more about the importance of trees and to participate and assist us in our goals, because it takes a village. And so what went into this plan? So a lot of data. Our consultant, Planet Geo, has been working again since 2023 on this plan. And so they started off with a top-down approach. And so you can see on the left, this is satellite imagery of the entire city of Norwalk. And in green shading, you can see our tree canopy coverage. From there, we were also able to look on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis to see how much canopy cover exists in each neighborhood, how much area is available in each neighborhood for possible plantings to add trees, and then how much area is not necessarily suitable for us to plant. And so on the lower right side, you can see, I believe that's Ponus Middle School, a baseball field. We don't necessarily want to be putting a forest in the middle of one of our recreation areas. So we also took an on-the-ground approach where we surveyed over 4,000 city trees, trees within our parks, like Veterans Park right here, along streets, in our easements, things like that. And we are hoping to expand the inventory and potentially capture up to 90% of the public trees in Norwalk in the coming year or two. So the purpose of actually going out and walking around, and I used to do this work in my previous jobs, walking around with a tablet, looking at every single tree, and inputting into a software, what type of tree is it? What's the condition? How large is it? How old might it be? That kind of data on the ground really helps us get to the granular level of what the state of our urban forest is right now today. And so from our canopy data, the master plan lays out a planting plan for the city to follow over the next 30 years or so. And it details exactly where we should prioritize our efforts and our budgets. And so here you can see the tree canopy coverage split out by neighborhoods. And they were able to take that data and many other factors like our input, our budgets, environmental data, and then create a plan for when and where we should be planting over the next 30 years. And you can see on the left, the areas that have the lowest tree canopy, South Norwalk, East Norwalk, in the gray shaded and light green areas are at the highest priority on the scale for planting in the future. And it gets very in depth. So you can see on the right-hand side also, this is a specific draft strategy for planting just in Springwood over the next 30 years. So you can see how helpful this is for our planting program. Right now, our approach is responding to tree requests from the public through our forums or when we get to meet folks in person, and following up construction projects and kind of being able to wrap things up by adding a streetscape to that area. But this would really help us have a more strategic approach to our planting program. So I want to note that environmental inequities are also a very important input to a plan like this. And so we can identify historically underserved communities and ensure that our strategies will equitably preserve, improve, and add to our green spaces for residents regardless of socioeconomic status. And so this is called the Tree Equity Score. And it takes in a lot of different information, and it can tell you, adding canopy to socioeconomic data, where environmental inequities are showing up in your specific locality. So this is a very helpful tool for us moving forward. So for the sake of time, there are many other components to the plan, but perhaps most importantly is the fact that it ends with an implementation plan for the city to achieve these goals. And it will serve as a guidebook to effectively move these tasks and these goals forward in the coming years, especially with these priorities listed out in a timeline, so that we can identify what's most important to push first and what we're capable of doing first. Some of the examples of other tasks that I'm not able to cover right now, but there are suggestions for updates to the tree ordinance. There's a plan for utilizing wood waste in the city. So when we do have to take a tree down, how can we utilize that wood waste? Can we make firewood with it? Can we offer wood chips to residents? There are suggestions for green infrastructure projects in the future. And it also outlines multiple budget and funding scenarios so that we can ensure that that aspect, which is vitally important to any kind of program, is in line with our goals and achievable. So in the stage that we're in right now in reviewing the plan, in reviewing the draft, this is where we can really look at the details and see what are we capable, and having honest conversations about what our existing program looks like, but also envisioning what our long-term goals are for the city in terms of sustainability and what role trees play in that effort. And so one of the most important pieces to this is the community, and how can we better provide services and education for our residents? How can we engage volunteer activities or workshops for residents? How do we better connect and integrate the various nonprofits and other groups within the city to work towards a common goal, and ensure that on the ground, people feel connected to our urban forest, people feel invested in our urban forest, and understand its importance, and understand that they have a very big role in this project and in this program. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Tree Advisory Committee, in partnership with the city, has a program called the Tree Liaison Program. And this was started years ago, but essentially it aims to have 1 or 2 volunteers kind of leading the urban forestry effort in each neighborhood. So I know there's been a couple different ways that that's kind of taken shape over the years. In some communities, someone has kind of led their neighborhood or just their block in finding spaces where there could be trees planted. The city is able to plant within front yard spaces. So let's say there's not much room adjacent to the road or between the sidewalk and the road for the city to actually plant on our property, but maybe some neighbors are interested in having trees planted in their front yard so that we can add to the canopy on that street. I know there's been a lot of other workshops. We will do like a yearly volunteer training day so that tree liaison volunteers can get to know what trees we plant and why, understand how we communicate with homeowners, and try to gather support for the program. So the Tree Liaison Program is really something we're trying to restart, kind of kick off, and we are certainly looking for new volunteers. We have one volunteer that's been helping me all fall. She's helped me locate probably 90 or maybe close to 100 tree locations this fall, and it's been extremely helpful. She's always saying how much she enjoys it, but I'd love to encourage people to get involved by reaching out to the committee on the city's website if you're interested. And so I just wanted to end with sustainability in mind, that through this plan, the city will have tools, especially our tree inventory software, which can actually tell you if you're standing in front of, let's say, a maple tree and it's 10 inches wide, it can actually tell you what ecosystem services that tree provides right now. So how much carbon it sequests in a year, how many pounds of pollutants does it remove from the air, things like that. And so having that qualifiable or quantifiable data will be really important in terms of the sustainability programs and structure that we're trying to create in the city. And I hope that we can integrate the tree master plan and this other data into those systems so that we can move forward and in a holistic way for the city. And so that's my overview. We're very excited to have the draft in hand, excited to be reviewing it over the next few months and really hoping we can kick off some of these initiatives next year. So thank you guys for your time.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much. This is definitely a great start. I can already see some of the alignment between the tree, some of the objectives in the tree master plan and some of those that are outlines in the climate action plan. So I'll just hold it up to a few questions. I'll just start up with a few questions that I have. So for the tree canopy percentage range, have you identified yet, for East Norwalk, we want to get it between 20 to 25, or is that something that's going to it's going to happen down the line once we establish what we want the ultimate percentage to be for that area?
Exactly that. So in the process of coming up with this draft, we've gone back and forth with the consultant on various scenarios of what should our ultimate canopy goal be and by when, which is a really tricky number to come up with. In terms of things like budget, what's realistic, climate, environmental stressors right now. So we've set a goal, I think, of 53% by 20 in 30 years. So 20. Let me just make sure I'm correct about that. Of 53%, yeah. So currently we're at 43% canopy coverage according to a 2021 study. We want to get to 53% within 30 years.
Is that for the entire city, or are you talking about just within East Norwalk and I'm sorry, East Norwalk and South Norwalk?
That would be for the city overall.
Entirely. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Cool. And just one quick follow-up on the tree equity score. How is it? How's like the percentage actually? Like, what do they identify? I mean, lower means better, higher means worse. Like, what's the? Because I didn't see it on the screen, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so a higher score is a better
Okay.
score.
Okay. Yeah.
And different data is weighted like differently.
Right.
So
Right.
heat data is, I think, a higher priority than some of the other things like level of education in the community. So
Got
it's
it.
very environmentally weighted in that regard.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So I'll open it up for other council members if they have any questions. Councilmember Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lopez. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for that presentation. I'm curious about, we've been talking a bit about invasive species and the tree of heaven and, taking some of those trees down. So I'm curious if you looked at, what percentage of those types of trees that we have and how taking them down. I know, I don't think that we can go around and take every tree of heaven down that's full of lanternflies. But I know that it's something we're looking at where we can take them from city property, from maybe areas in the right of way where it's convenient. But is that going to have any impact, do you think, on the canopy?
Yeah, so I think two things there. When we identify, like calf pasture has a number of invasive tree of heaven with a lot of spotted lanternfly, and that's one of the main areas we're looking at whether we can take them down and what strategy we should have. So in an area like that, we would be able to replant and replace the benefit of those trees strategically. But if we were talking on a larger scale, there is a pest and disease component to the master plan or section within it that gives recommendations not to specific pests necessarily, but how to monitor for them, what kind of reaction scenarios you can have. That makes me think about, the ash trees like 30 years ago. That was our number one street tree.
Yeah.
Or chestnut. Chestnut was, kind of like the staple tree in suburban neighborhoods for years and years and years. And then with emerald ash borer, we had We lost most of our ashes at this point. And so I think the plan will kind of lay out various approaches to dealing with those issues. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I remember the ash tree situation quite well. We had to take down, if I recall, like 4 on our very small property at the time. So, yeah.
And it was very rapid too, which made
Yeah.
it very hard for foresters to manage. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, thank you. Sarah, quick question. So what are the sources of funding for the tree planting program? Do you rely on grants? Is it partly from the city? Like what's the structure like, the financing structure like?
For the last 2 years, we've had funding from ARPA, which we will have expended all of that funding as of December this year, which is our cutoff. But yeah, we do have grant funding. I would say it's like 50-50 grant funding going forward. And then the other 50% is capital budget. Yeah.
Okay, now, I mean, do some of the grants come from the federal government, or are they strictly all from? Now, given given this election cycle, do you anticipate that will have any negative impact on pursuing grants for green initiatives?
I can say that the grant that we were most recently awarded, this almost a year ago, actually, through the Inflation Reduction Act, there's still funding available through that. It's kind of been a slow rollout to ensure they're spreading the wealth. So I already know that there's other grants out there without funding. I'll also say Connecticut Deep is a great funding source. I mean, usually for much smaller amounts, not necessarily the $1 million we won last year, but those two sources hopefully will stay stable. But in terms of the planting priority plan, it's not solely, the city isn't the only stakeholder who can participate in that. And there's other things we can do to help homeowners or businesses, other entities plant as well to add to the canopy. So not solely relying on our capital budget or finding grants. We can give seedling giveaways. There are a lot of folks that have donated trees to the city as well. So if, with any business, it's good that we have various income sources to keep our planting program going.
Okay, excellent. Does anyone else have any questions? I can ask a few more. Let's see. Mr. Goldstein, you said
No, I think this is a very comprehensive presentation. And I guess I think that, John, I think you bring up a good point, which is that I think we're going to have some challenges getting federal grants for the next 4 years, and that's putting it mildly. So I think if there are ways in which we can make progress on the tree master plan by either seeking state funding or, frankly, private funding, I think that should be something that is, if it hasn't already been sort of a part of the plan in terms of how we're going to fund this, I think those kind of public-private partnerships are going to be crucial, because there will be companies, I mean, despite the results of the election, I don't know if you saw the other day, I think it was yesterday, the CEO of ExxonMobil came out against the US pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords again. So I do think there will be opportunities to seek private funding and corporate funding, for these kind of programs. And I think that's something we're going to have to explore. Also, I've killed a lot of lanternflies this fall.
I'm
Just
proud
saying,
of you.
it's just my way of contributing.
evil.
Anytime, step right on those things. So
I
Excellent.
always
Yeah,
but
have
no,
my
like
handy
you,
vinegar
like-
spray bottle. I use the vinegar in the spray bottle.
that's good. Well, me, it's like if I'm in South Norwalk, there was a period where they were just everywhere on the sidewalks. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I guess one of the things I think that we can do, and I don't know, I can't remember if you had said it, so forgive me if I'm sort of glazing over this, whether there are tools or other things people can, resources people can look to deal with these sort of problems, especially if they've got lanternflies that are like infecting their trees at home and stuff like that. So I think those kind of resources are things people really look out for and would appreciate.
Yeah, I think currently we heavily rely on the state, you know, for DEEP
Yep.
to give direction, but we certainly could use more education and outreach in-house for our residents specifically.
All right. And since Johan prompted me, I'm sorry, I got one more. I remember when I think it was an initial meeting, this was some time ago, and I remember I had asked you a question about figuring out how to add trees to some of our state roads, particularly on like Connecticut Avenue, some parts of West Avenue, where they are tree deserts. And it is just strip mall after strip mall. And that's just sort of, at this point, I think it's sort of an older street design. But one of the things that I think you were interested in, and I'm not sure if you've done anything on this, but so I'm just curious, if there have been ways to partner with the local businesses there, and the various, owners of the various malls and properties along those streets to figure out ways to put trees on those thoroughfares. Because we know the immense environmental benefits. And frankly, it just looks nicer. Like, and that means something to people too. So I don't know if that's something you've been able to engage with at all in terms of figuring out how to build potential consensus and getting the introduction of trees, frankly, on some private property too.
Yeah, I will say that would be addressed in the plan a little bit in terms of where the onus is in terms of adding to the canopy and where we're lacking. In talking with the TMP department, especially, I feel like we share the same concerns of trying to get things done on these state roads and how difficult it can be at times. But
Well, yeah, and especially since, it's not just about putting it on directly where the sidewalk is. Obviously, we want the sidewalk to be what the sidewalk is, but it's about, sacrificing some space, that's probably in many respects taken up by parking. And seeing if we can beautify some of the space with not a whole lot of encroachment. It's not really, I don't think that substantial a contribution by the property owners, especially sort of along the edges of the route. But I don't know if that's something they would be interested in doing, but many of these parking lots are quite big, and I don't think it's that big a sacrifice. They
agreed.
might think it is, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think that's a very good spot to start in terms of outreach, of how important that is, and getting some buy-in there.
I actually also wonder, I don't know if there are any programs at the state level or at the local level about credits. So if private businesses do take action to contribute positively to the environmental development of the area, if there's any sort of benefits they can get or any sort of credits or anything like that, that may incentivize them to doing something like that.
Yeah, true.
All right, I'm getting off my hobby horse.
No, good point.
Sarah, quick, two-part question. The first one is, have you noticed any sort of lessons learned from other municipalities in terms of public engagement or formalizing the actual structure of these liaisons? Let's say you have two people per neighborhood or per street, and then you have them kind of report to like a district sort of committee, and then all the committees kind of will report to one another at some point down the line.
Yeah, and I mean, in my experience working in New York City, they had a really strong, I think it's called like the Green Thumb program, and that extended to both like garden spaces, but also stewardship for street trees. And it just involved a lot of engagement, like having a solid schedule. Every single Saturday we meet at this park, like keeping it relevant in people's lives. So I think what we are maybe missing or could improve upon is the structure for folks, because people need to know when they want to show up or work it into their schedule. It's very understandable. So that, and then I think with this plan, we can certainly come up with a more really bolster like a marketing strategy. Like, let's brand our tree program. Let's make it interesting for folks. I want people to identify Norwalk's tree program even by like a logo or something. We've thought about doing something like a mailer or a door hanger, like, hey, this street we've identified is really low in canopy. If you're interested, the city could plant a tree in your front yard completely free for you, things like that. But in terms of engagement, it's really structure. I think we could use some assistance there.
That's perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Because I mean, we do have a lot of neighborhood associations in the cities, and we can kind of reach out to them as well. And then the next question I was going to ask you is there any possibility to partner with MPS? Because I know that some of these initiatives really do have socio emotional or academic benefits to some of the to students. So is that something that we could ultimately explore?
Certainly, yeah. And our Arbor Day annual event is we rotate and go to a school each year, and we talk with the principals, we talk with the teachers. They get to select what tree we will plant. The kids get to participate in planting the tree for Arbor Day. And so we do have that touch point already, and people are usually very jazzed about that. We just went to Silvermine Elementary this past year, and they had a tree that we planted 10 years ago right out their front window. And so they were very excited to have a new tree 10 years later. So like I said, definitely have that existing touch point, but that would be a great partnership for sure.
Great. That sounds promising. So so next steps, is the plan already set? Is it still like in a draft phase or
Yeah, this is a baby draft phase right
okay,
now.
okay, baby draft. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, that's fantastic. But in the meantime, if we can help in any capacity to start to organize some of these liaison community groups, certainly I'm happy to work with you on that. I'm sure other members as well. Oh, Councilmember Smith has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to, you're talking about the Arbor Day celebrations at the elementary schools. They are lovely, and the kids get so involved. And, I don't know if the other council members here have had the opportunity to go to one, but, they all get together in the gym and they sing songs about trees, and they have plays and art, and then they all come together and plant the tree. It's really beautiful. And so, but I think it might be great if, we could find a way to move that into the middle schools too, like some way of talking about trees and in the environment into the middle school, because, they're little kids, right? And they're all excited about it. And I think it stays with them, but, they move on to other things because, other things become more important, But I think it would be worth, moving something into the middle schools and ultimately the high schools. I mean, the high schools, of course, have environmental clubs and things, but maybe working with them more directly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah. You can respond.
I just want to make sure I give props to Paul Sotnick, who's been running. He's been like
Yeah.
the impromptu tree arborist for years. I didn't know that we only did it at elementary schools, but
Yeah.
yes, they absolutely loved it. They had an Arbor Day song. We did the ceremony. They're a bilingual school, so we did it in both Spanish and English. It was really great.
Yeah, and Paul, he loves that program. He works so hard on it. Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned him.
Yeah, no, and then to Barbara's point, I think that even at the middle school level, there could be other benefits to that. I mean, whether it's like data entry, doing some work with the GIS, right? Some things like that might not be directly related to the actual implementation of or planting of trees, but other things that will be beneficial in terms of academics. There's always opportunities, no matter kind of coming up with creative ways to make sure the kids benefit in every way possible. So, but anyways, on that note, since we have to jump to another meeting for Parks and Recs, Sarah, thank you so much for your presentation. It's very thoughtful. I'm excited and going forward, and we'll be in communication. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, everyone else. Thank you, Katie. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Oh, wait, I need a motion to adjourn, right? That's right.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thanks. Good night.